This show contains profanity, advice you should never follow, humor that you might not enjoy. The names have been changed to protect the guilty. Do not try this at home.
This episode of the Pox and Puss Podcast, I make a horrible observation about a book cover model. Puss teaches a group of young men how to fluff their balls, and you can do anything if you put your mind to it. Episode 7B, a dab on the bag.
What? What'd you say?
Yeah, we did have a big old rich-ass meal right before we sat down and reminisced.
It was just a burger, but still.
Yeah, mine was definitely...
What'd you get?
I got the blue cheeseburger.
Oh, I just went for the plain old burger. I didn't even put cheese on it, and I'm like...
3 little pigs, bacon on ham on pork.
That was...
That sounded crazy. I didn't know...
Like something my boyfriend would love.
I'm glad I was sitting at my end of the table.
It was
that
meat
way.
with meat on meat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because I probably would have wound up with one of those fuckers.
Ever. Does that sound muffly to you?
Yes, because you're talking into the back of it.
Every time I switched it up.
That's okay.
I thought I would try it this way.
I was like, man, that sounds weirder than you talking. I was like, wait a minute, that sounds like
I'm only hearing out of one ear.
Oh, should I be hearing myself?
Oh,
Check 1, 2. There we go.
It helps to get used to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't kick...
I normally have my mic set up like this so I can see
Right.
Pox really well, and then I was like,
Right.
I'll
Am
try
I
it
supposed
this
to hear
way.
out of one ear?
No.
I hear Prof breathing.
Yep, that's good. Hello.
Yeah, it's definitely just this ear. It's like I'm a deaf on one side.
Is that better?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Can you hear out of both
Yep,
then?
now I can hear out of both.
Good.
Was it something over there?
Yeah, I had the wrong adapter thing.
Oh.
If during the show you see me like take my phone out and do one of these, it's usually that I'm just making a note of something that I want to talk about at some point, and I'm not like checking my Facebook like I'm so bored doing this podcast. So
If I take mine out, I am ignoring you.
yeah.
I left mine upstairs.
Well, good.
Let's
Why
see.
is there Flow
Let's
Easy,
see.
Ice
What do we do?
Cold, and LOL up there?
I think yours is backwards.
Those are our previous guests that we've had on the show.
Okay.
It's a Hall of Fame, if you will.
I like it.
And after the show, y'all will join the ranks.
Woo.
And by the way, we hit record, and it's already been recording. But
Okay.
I just never hit pause.
Because you're going to edit it out anyway.
Yeah, I just never hit pause.
Right.
Again, I'd like to remind everybody to never follow our advice, especially when it comes to medical stuff. Consult your physician before hiking the Appalachian Trail.
Have you ever heard of bag balm?
Yeah.
I didn't know what
Yeah.
bag balm was. I had to have a country boy explain that to me. Apparently, they use that on the cow's udders.
Udders, yeah.
And
You get the udder
a
chafe.
lot of people have the bag balm. And I was like, what the fuck is that?
They make
Yeah.
it in these really adorable containers that look about like maybe just a little bit bigger than like dice.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I probably wouldn't want to backpack that. I'd get one of those little spinny cosmetic like little bitty.
Right.
Put some in there because
Right.
that goes a long way. Bag balm.
Yeah.
You little dabble, do you?
Yeah.
Right on the old bag.
Little dab.
Little dabble, do
Dab
ya?
on the bag.
I also carried KY jelly for a variety of reasons, but I found that worked really, really well if I felt like I had blisters or like hip rubs. You put a little bit of that on there, and it's just like it's a high enough quality lubricant that it
Right.
just sort of like it wouldn't. I mean, it would stop it, and there were a couple of times where like if I felt like I had a little blister forming on my foot, and I didn't have tape or didn't have whatever I felt like I needed, I would take my shoe and my sock off, clean my foot really well, put a pretty decent glob of KY jelly on, put my sock back on carefully, put my shoe back on, and it wouldn't bother me anymore.
Interesting. That's a
It
good
works
one.
really well for like super skinny people
Yeah.
who are just gonna like, you know, their collarbones get rubs or their hip bones get rubs.
So your hip bones you got some funny stuff going on there from the
I had hip
belt.
blisters.
Hip
Yeah.
blisters, yeah.
Because I was one of those weird chicks on the trail that, for various reasons that I might explain later, I like lost a lot of weight. And women don't usually lose that much weight out there.
Yeah.
And I was down like to like 115 pounds, which is way too light for me.
From
so.
what? Where did you start out at 30 on 30,
I
140?
started out at like 150 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I got down to like 115. Mm-hmm. But anyways, my hip belt was too loose, and I couldn't get it tight enough.
Yeah.
And it was just loose enough that it would rub over my hip bone, and I got these lines, like on both sides, like little tilted lines of blisters, like a long, thin blister.
It was like a toothpick.
They were
It
sore.
was like a toothpick on her hip. and the
Yeah,
whole thing was
that
like
sounds
this long,
horrible.
skinny blister.
I wish I had
Yeah.
known the KY trick.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I didn't have
it
any
is a good
KY,
one.
but I would
That was
have
a
found
fortuitous mistake. It worked out really well.
But that was the one. I never got anything with my feet.
I don't think I carried any first aid shit. I carried aspirin, duct tape,
Yeah,
and bandanas.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if I got any, I didn't have any first aid kits. I know some people started with them. Did you, Puss?
Right before I left for the AT, and I left in March, and the previous December, I went and got my Wilderness First Responder certification and put together as comprehensive a first aid kit as would fit in a small freezer bag.
Right.
Like not a gallon size freezer bag, but like, what is it? Like the quart size, whatever is just a little bit bigger than a sandwich bag.
Right.
And I thanked my lucky stars all the time because I was always the person that turned around a bend and found catastrophe. Like I never really had anything happen to me, but I ran into more people or watched stuff happen where I was like, ooh, shit, you're going to need some help with that.
Right. Did they have the shoe thing where you put your shoes? When I was in Germany as a kid, they put the shoes. You put those outside in the hallway, and they would put goodies in. That's instead of a stocking, you had a shoe.
Yeah.
It's definitely a Dutch thing.
Yeah. They, as far as I know, they didn't do that. I left. I think I flew home on Christmas Eve, so I didn't actually see like
Well,
what.
the Krampus was coming.
Whoa! I needed to get the fuck out of town is what needed to happen. Or else this chick was gonna get burned alive. But
Krampus. When I got to Harper's Ferry, he was like leading a tour.
Was he really?
And I was like,
Jack was a
"Who is
showman.
this?" Yeah. He had like 3 people he was showing them that
you keep
there was that big,
saying
you know-
he's not like dead or anything, right?
No, but he's not hiking anymore.
Right. Knock on wood. I'm not trying to kill
I'm hoping
Baltimore Jack. I promise.
Actually,
Oh,
I
great.
would love to see Jack.
We have the
again.
pool going for that one too.
Yeah.
I would love to see Jack again, and you know what? There's a damn good chance I'll see him.
I'm sure it'll happen.
Oh, you're gonna see him if you hike. You
Oh, yeah.
know that. I'm not when you hike.
Yeah.
I do have to say, the day that I did the approach trail, I got to the top of Springer Mountain. I signed in. I put all my stuff in the shelter, ate my dinner, and then walked back and sat on the rock and watched the sunset. And there was this other kid sitting on the rock, and I'm all like, "Are you starting the trail tomorrow too?" Like, woo, like so excited. And he looked at me, and it was March 23rd, and he looked at me and said, "No, I just finished." And I was like, "No shit." And he was like, "Yeah, I wanted to hike all by myself, so I started my southbound hike in September." And I was like, "Well, that sounds awful to me, but congratulations." Like I was, and I was all excited for him. And because he hiked at kind of an odd time, he was basically like,
Even for a southbounder, that's an odd
Yeah,
time.
that
Yeah.
is very odd.
he said that he had never sat and talked to anybody on the trail for more than like a half an hour at a time. Like he had never seen the same person twice. Like, and it was,
Good Lord.
like I asked him what his name was, and he said, "My name's Graham." And I was like, "You don't have a trail name?" He's like, "I've never met anybody to give me a trail." Like he just like,
Wow.
this crazy experience. But the only person that he said, "Do you know Baltimore Jack?" And I said, "No."
Well, at that point, you didn't.
Well,
No.
but he says, "Do you know Baltimore Jack?" And I said, "No." And he said, "You will." And that was like that was
That was
pretty
your
much
introduction to
that was
Baltimore
that-
Jack.
I heard about Baltimore Jack at the end of my first day on trail from this southbounder kid named Graham, and pretty much all he had to say, he was,
You will.
"Do you know Baltimore Jack?" "No." "You will. When you do, tell him the southbounder Graham says hey." And I'm like, okay, like, you know, and I mean, what was it? Like a matter of a month and a half later, I'm holding his sack of condoms.
Right? Yeah, you did. You got to know Baltimore Jack.
I sure did.
Yeah, Graham was prophetic.
Yeah. When I was at Thomas Knob Shelter in the Grayson Highlands, stopping for lunch, and I'm eating lunch, and it's, you know, that shelter right on top of the mountain. There's ponies everywhere.
Yeah, I got you.
And it's the one where, like, the shelter platform is up tall enough so that, like, the ponies can, like, get their faces in, but, like, they can't really, like, you know, like, they can't ever end up in the shelter. They can't really get much of their head in the shelter, but they're there. And it's me and another guy that I'm hiking with, and we stop for lunch, and there's 2 sleeping bags set up in the shelter already, but it's lunchtime, so these are people that are there, and I ended up there over Memorial Day weekend, so the Grayson Highlands are totally packed, and there's a guy and his probably 12-year-old daughter, and they talked about how every Memorial Day they did a trip together, and I'm like, oh, that's great, and you know, we're talking, and this guy, so when we ran into these people, there weren't any ponies around the shelter. But then ponies showed up, and he's like, ooh, I want to take pictures of the ponies. And he gets out of the shelter. And he's not wearing any shoes. And normally, like, I'm happy to let grown men do whatever they want, but I'm kind of going like, hey, man, like, this is, and the ground around there is awful. It's like really like lots of sharp rocks and lots of there's lots of trash debris too, and like just lots of bad stuff, not to mention a herd of horses. He's jumping all over the place, and I'm like, hey man, you may want to put some shoes on. Like, this is probably not a great place to be jumping around barefoot. And he's jumping around trying to take pictures of ponies, and one of the ponies like goes to kick another pony, and he jumps up onto the picnic table. Well, the slope of the roof of the shelter overhangs so that, like, if you're sitting on the bench closest to the shelter of the picnic table, if it was raining, you wouldn't be getting rained on. But when he jumped up onto the picnic table, he ran headfirst into the rusty tin roof.
Oh, right.
And it cut him, like, right across his forehead.
Nice.
Ugh.
And totally, like, I mean, cut him to the skull.
So there was a lot of blood.
Across the forehead. And he hits this roof line, and the whole roof just, like, rings out. Like, it's just this, like, thwong. And I look up, and the guy that was sitting next to me told me later that as soon as he hit, I uttered under my breath, oh, you motherfucker. Because I just, like, turned around and I was like, God damn it. Like, grab my first aid kit and, like, get over to this guy, and there's blood pouring down his face. And his daughter is, like, in the fetal position, like, rocking herself and crying, and, like, she's a mess. And I'm like, all right. And I clean him up, and I'm like, dude, you need stitches. Like, this isn't awful. Like, this, you're not going to die from this, but, like, you have a bleeding head wound, which requires medical attention. Yeah. And he's like, no, I'm good. I'm like, all right, well, you've officially lost, like, the privilege of making your own choices. So we're going to pack up your stuff, and I'm going to dress your head wound for right now, and we're gonna walk you back to your car, and depending on your decision-making skills at that point, you're either gonna drive yourself to the hospital or I'm gonna drive you to the hospital. So you can think about that. We're gonna get your stuff together, we're gonna get your daughter's stuff together, and we're all gonna hike out together. And luckily, like, we walked about a half a mile, and Barrett was the ridge runner at that time. And I had just met him, like, the day before. And he walks around the corner. I'm like, Barrett, hey, where's your car? And he's like, oh, it's like 2 miles from here. I'm like, awesome. I'm going to give you these guys. You're going to walk them back to your car, and you're going to take care of them from there, right? And he's like, sure. And I like give him this nicely written out like soap note of everything that this guy's condition and send them on their way. But like that was the first like crazy.
So you needed your first aid kit.
I used it a lot.
Did you?
I used it a lot.
Pox, did you carry a first aid kit?
No, but we walked up. I don't think I really ever did, but I remember we walked up. We did the creeper trail out of Damascus.
Right. Yes, of course.
You know, like just like why the fuck else would you go any other way?
Right.
But there was this little town, and there was a caboose.
Mm-hmm.
In
I remember
town.
that. Yep.
And right outside there was like a privy, and it's also like wherever this little town, like I don't know if they still do or not, but like there's like it's like the dump, like it's where you bring your trash. And so it was one of those back-to-back privies, and so like Barf and I need to poop at the same time, so it's like all right, you know, goes on one side, go on the other, and then I remember hearing somebody like pull up in a car, and that had happened a couple of times. People just come and bringing in their trash and throwing their trash into the back and then taking off again.
Mm-hmm.
And we're sitting on the other side on the old caboose, and just kind of sitting there, and so Barf gets out of the privy first, and it takes me a little bit longer, and then I remember getting out, and as I get onto the front of the caboose or the side we've been sitting on, like out of the corner of my eye, I saw somebody like leap off the other side, and I was like, that was really weird, and then I realized, where's Barf? And then I hear a noise, and I'm like, what in the world? And I come around the side, and this woman had come up in like a big old jacked up Dodge Ram pickup truck to drop off her trash.
Right.
And when she went to sling the bag, she basically lost her balance and fell like directly off, like standing on the top of the back of this truck, fell off probably like, 7 feet onto her hip, like directly on her hip. And my first thought was, I'm going to run get help. And he's like, it's like, no, there's a fucking car right here. I'm going to get in the car and go.
Well, couldn't have fixed that with first aid kit.
No, couldn't have fixed our first aid kit, but it was just one of those, like, I didn't come into many situations like that, but that was one
I
where
really
you're
didn't
like,
either. All I had was duct tape. I know I took about 15 feet of duct tape and rolled it right under the grip of my hiking pole. And throughout the hike, there was a dozen times where I'd pull off an inch or a foot and cut it off, and I had duct tape.
Yep.
And a couple of those times were for some wounds. And duct tape's pretty tough stuff. I don't know if it was antiseptic or not, but nothing ever seemed to get infected because of it, and it would fall off in a few days.
No, I felt like I was always running into people that were like, you don't know anything about first aid, do you? And I'm like, yeah,
I do.
I do.
So you took a wilderness first responder. Cool.
And
See, that's why.
I've done 2 recerts, and at this point, I feel like I'm jinxing it to not get the recert.
Right.
Because every time when I got my certification and the last 2 recerts, within a month of getting my brand new shiny card, I have watched a near fatal accident and provided life-saving medical attention until somebody else shows up.
Oh gosh.
So at this point, like, I have to keep getting this because it's
I never saw the worst thing I saw on the trail was a dislocated shoulder, and we couldn't do anything for him because we didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And actually, I sort of thought, this was in '95, I sort of thought I knew what you were supposed to do, which was like the guy lays on his side, you put one foot under his armpit and the other one on his neck, pulling his arm. He didn't like that therapy.
I don't
So
think
he
I would
ended up
like
hiking
the
out.
sound of that either.
That's not quite right, is
well,
it?
there is a maneuver of like derotating,
Right.
and it will eventually click back in. It depends on how long it's been out of place too,
Right.
because your muscles will tense up. Makes it really hard to get it back
Yeah.
in place. I knew somebody who was hiking, dislocated their shoulder, had everything slinged up, which if you've ever dislocated something, it is horrifically painful. I've
Right.
dislocated both shoulders separately, and both times, as soon as they popped out, my first reaction was to vomit on my own feet. Like, it's just like
It hurts
so
that bad.
painful.
Yeah.
And so this guy had been hiking, dislocated his shoulder, had it all slinged up, and was hiking out. And I mean, every movement is painful.
Right.
He's just trying to get somewhere to get help.
Right.
There's two day hikers coming in the opposite direction. He's like, hey, do either of you know anything about how my shoulder's dislocated? I'm in so much pain, I can hardly speak. Can you do anything? And one of them said, yeah, I'm actually an orthopedic doctor. And he's like, great, will you help me? And he goes, no, I won't.
What?
He's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, well, at this point, it's been dislocated for a while and you really need to be in a medical facility. So, like, I don't want to be held liable for any nerve damage that you've suffered. And at that point, you're like, I will kill you. As soon as this arm is back in,
Right.
you are first. You're number one on my list.
Yeah.
Like,
So the doc wouldn't help him.
Doc
I got a
wouldn't
hit
help him.
list and you're on it.
Doc wouldn't help him. But when I was going south, so I went through the Mahoosic Notch, southbound, and when I got to that shelter that's like just on the south side, I stayed there for the night and I went to get water. And you have to like walk down. There's lots of big boulders to get to where you need to get water.
Right.
And I was in my Crocs, which were totally like worn slick at that point.
Right.
And I went to get water and I stepped on one of the rocks. And before I even knew what had happened, my foot just flew out from underneath me and I landed chest first on like a coffee table sized boulder and displaced my shoulder. So it like clicked out, clicked back in like immediately. And I spent the entire next day, like, I slinged everything up. I was hiking with some good folks who had some good medicine, and spent the entire next, like, 2 days over medicated, like, but just, like, out of my mind with, I can't hardly put one foot in front of the other. I'm not in any pain, which is great, but holy cow. And my welcome to Maine sign picture is like me with my arm all slinged up.
Whew.
It was rough.
It was rough. Good God. Well, I think we should talk about your book.
Talk about my book.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned the trail in your book.
Yeah.
The way I work the trail, or the way the trail has influenced my book,
What's
is
the name of your book?
Enlightened.
Yeah.
On Amazon or what?
Yes, it's on Amazon. You can get an ebook or you can get a paperback.
Yep.
Well, it was heavily influenced by the trail. I mean, I think the first idea of writing, always wanted to write, but I think the idea for this particular book started on the trail. The seed for it started there because I'm hiking along and, you know, you have lots and lots of time to think, just you and your brain. And after I'd gone through the typical, what am I doing with my life? What am I going to do when I'm done with this? Yada, yada, yada. I started thinking weird things like, you know, what if people actually lived out here? You know, because we used to talk about it being like the longest, thinnest community.
Mm-hmm.
What if people actually lived out here? And of course, Prof and I hooked up with people, and we ended up calling ourselves the tribe. There was about, you know, there was an 8 in the solid group, but there's people who came and go. And we're all part of the tribe, but we started calling ourselves the tribe. What if people did live in tribes out on a trail? And what if it wasn't just the Appalachian Trail? What if there were, you know, trails that went transcontinental, you know, cut all the way out to California and back and up to Canada? And that started the idea of, in this book that I've written and published, this crew called the Travelers. And basically they're a group of healers that live out on this trail system in an alternate universe that I've created that's just like a step to the left from ours.
Right.
Like if our world existed with witches and healers and fairies and vampires and things like that, this is what it would be like.
Nice.
My little environment. But it's heavily influenced by the trail experience because I learned something about life on the trail, of course, which I'm not going to say that you know, I had like an epiphany on the trail, but what I did get was, it doesn't matter what you have. It doesn't even matter where you're going. It's more about who you're with and letting go of the judgment that comes up. Just letting it go. Because none of it really matters. It really doesn't matter. So in this book, I write a lot about how the travelers are people who have let go of modern life. It's not that they don't embrace it and they don't go there, but they're out there to just be who they are. And by being who they are, irreverent, whatever it is, because that was certainly part of our thing out on the trail. But the travelers in particular, I use trail names.
Okay, yeah.
The funny thing is, if you know who those trail names are attached to, you'll go, but that's not guided.
Yeah.
And that's not Peacepipe, and that's not, Sensei, and that's not Pox. Kind of switch the names around, kind of playing with the ideas. Because I didn't want anybody to get like, hey, that's who you think I am.
Yeah.
You write a book and people are like, are you going to write me into your novel? And you're like, you don't want me to write you into your novel because you're not going to like what I write. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter if I do the most wonderful, what I think, glorifying characterization of you in the novel. You're going to go, hey, but you had me with purple hair, and I would never do that.
Nice.
So that part of the book is heavily influenced by the trail and the experience, the travelers. And like I said, they're a bunch of healers. And to me, that's part of what we were doing out there. It was just kind of getting our mind right.
Right.
Because getting your mind right was when, and we talked about this the other day, getting your mind right, when that clicked, it didn't matter what else you had to go through. It was just, you just put one foot in front of the other and you stopped judging what was happening in that moment. It could be freaking raining and you're just like, yeah, I'm here, I'm doing it. It's hard, but I'm here and I'm going to finish.
I had a friend who, when I worked out in New Mexico, we would get like a here's your group's food bag kind of bag. And it always came with like one of those little things of Purell. And you're like, are you shitting me? Like, you're really going to give us this little thing of Purell? And this guy who'd been working there for a while, he's like, man, get all those bottles you can. Like, all the crews always get rid of them. But, because you can divvy up as you divvy up the weight. A lot of times they'll be like, we don't need a thing of Purell, and they'll throw it out. He's like, get those. And he's like, like on day 3 or day 4, you start to get that chafe. And he's just like, just half the bottle in there and just slathered on and just ride that crazy red feeling and just, oh, fuck. And then hit the other side. And it happened to me one time. I was like, I got the Purell thing, and I was like, ooh, that worked. And so from then on, I didn't leave.
Yeah. Baby wipes are key.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah, something just to get that.
Yeah. I used to carry paper, but after a couple of days, I kind of used the baby wipes in case I had any sort of problems. It didn't go quite right.
That was very delicately put.
Or after a couple of days, when you can't help but start to have a few problems, kind of touch up a little bit, so to speak, with the baby wipes.
Powdering your nose in the woods.
When I worked at wilderness camp, I would have, 7 to 10, middle teenage boys in my group. And the camp I worked for, you had to have a male and a female counselor for each group, even if the group was all boys.
Right.
And there were a couple of sessions that were like in the heat of the summer where there was no escaping. You were just like sweating your balls off all day, every day. And as soon as the first kid started to have like the cowboy walk, you just were like, all right, let's have a little talk, because this is what's going to happen. And like, even as a woman, like, I got really good at explaining to people how to poop in the woods, but my favorite was how to explain to 8 15-year-old boys how to fluff their balls with Gold Bond powder.
Right.
And not have it be awkward, and to have them understand it and actually follow through on it, and for everybody to be okay with it.
Right.
And you just like, eventually it's like, all right, line up in a semicircle, hold out your hand, here's a big old of Gold Bond powder.
Right.
Disperse, fluff, And if you don't have baby powder all over the front of you, I am going to know that you're a liar. Right. You're going to feel very uncomfortable in so many ways, right. And it's going to be all your fault.
And did that work?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We refer to it as chub rub.
Chub rub, yes.
Hey, gang, just want to let you know about a contest we're running with Zach Davis, the author of popular book Appalachian Trials. Here he is to tell you a little bit about it.
Hey guys, my name is Zach Davis. I am the author of a book called Appalachian Trials. It is a psychological and emotional guide to through hiking the Appalachian Trail. But I'm calling in to announce an amazing new contest on the Pox and Puss Podcast. I love your guys' show, by the way. You do great work. But the contest is called Walkin' with Walkin'. What does that mean? All right, so give us your best Appalachian Trail story. Seems pretty straightforward, right? Well, here's the catch. You have to deliver this story using your best Christopher Walken impersonation. I was actually supposed to give this message using my Christopher Walken accent, but I didn't really realize how difficult that was until attempting it for the first time just a minute ago. So in other words, Godspeed to you. The winner of the contest will receive a signed copy of Appalachian Trials. I'm pretty sure people think the book is good, at least judging by the reviews on Amazon. Unless I'm getting punked by Earth, which is still totally possible. But anyways, Walkin' with Walkin', good luck. Can't wait to hear your entries. Happy hiking.
Okay, so there you have it. Polish up those Walken impressions and put it out there. Give us a call at 828-394-4526. Again, the number, go ahead and just put it in your phone in case something crazy happens to you while you're on the trail. The phone number again, 828-394-4526. The calls for the contest need to be in by midnight Eastern Time on Saturday the 19th of January, 2013. Puss and I will make our decision on Sunday the 20th, January 2013. And then the announcement will be made via podcast on Monday the 21st, January 2013. So again, that's your best Christopher Walken impersonation, and along with a really good trail story. Keep it to about 1.5 to 2 minutes tops. And we'll make the announcement, and you'll get that autographed copy of a really cool book, Appalachian. He made me say it. Appalachian Trials.
That's part of the connection. It's really hard to say. This is not like Flo was saying the other day. This is not here's a guide to live life book. It is a paranormal fantasy, fiction, romance, mystery, action adventure story.
Right.
It's not,
It's not an Appalachian Trail book.
It's not how to achieve enlightenment.
Yeah.
It's, not enlightenment for dummies or anything. Right?
Yeah.
It's a fictional story. It's an idea that came into my head and kind of grew on its own.
Just on a side note, I thought it was funny that was a hired model, like it was or a stock photo.
Oh, on the
cover,
on
yeah.
the cover, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was somebody that you knew.
No. But it's a fun book. But it's also, it opens up with, some quotes from Gandhi and, the four-armed Buddhist Chesrig prayer on suffering. And, so there's some depth to it, if you want it to be.
Absolutely.
And there were Thru-Hikers in it, right?
Yeah, I was just talking about that. The names have been kind of swapped around to protect the guilty.
Mm-hmm.
There are no innocents.
No.
That's our foreword, our
piece
warning.
Of advice or disclaimer. Yeah.
Names have been changed to protect the guilty.
Yep.
The innocent don't need protecting.
No.
Yeah.
But it was fun to use those personalities. Like there's this whole scene, it's one of my favorite scenes, where they're taking Lodi, who's the main character, into this shrine. It's the Lotus Shrine, and that's actually influenced by an ashram that I go to a couple times a year up in Virginia. It's in like Southern Virginia ashram in the Blue Ridge Mountains near the James River. It just I gotta show you a picture of it, but they've built this shrine and they built it to look like a lotus flower holding like this blue ball or whatever. So that was my inspiration for the shrine in the book. So they're taking Lodi to the shrine, and it's this glowing pink lotus flower growing up out of the basin of the James River.
Yeah.
And it's the tribe, the travelers. And they're taking it into the shrine to have this little ceremony that's going to show whether has healer capabilities or not. And they walk in and there's this glowing orb in the middle of the shrine or whatever. And you think it's going to be this big, serious, solemn event. And these travelers are just cracking jokes and back and forth. And who do you think you are, Mitch? And yeah, that's what you think. And blah, blah, blah. You wish you were a fairy. Aha, very irreverent. And it was all, I mean, I'm literally reliving moments in shelters along the trail as the dialogue's snapping back and forth between these people cracking jokes.
Yep.
But to me, and as I wrote this story, what I suddenly realized is, and I'm playing with the concept of enlightenment in a lot of ways in this book, but it's not about sitting on top of a mountain, because really, was hiking the trail about getting to any particular place?
Right.
When you stood on top of Katahdin, or if you, did a, flip-flopped or whatever, it's like that place that you ended it on or where you ended up. I can remember it was great. We snapped photos. We're on top of Katahdin. It's always like, okay, now what? It's just a leg of the journey. It's not an end or even a beginning. It's just a part of it.
It's like we've talked about on here. I don't think there really has, the exception of like times like when we've hurt ourselves or something like that, we don't really ever talk about the actual hiking portion of it on this show. It's like, because it's all about the bullshitting and the relationships and the people you met along the way.
Absolutely.
That seems to be more what people remember and have stories about.
Oh, and I will say this about writing the novel, and this is for anybody who's contemplating hiking the trail, or anybody who has done it, or even, and that doesn't even have to be the Appalachian Trail, the PCT, whatever. You're contemplating doing this kind of journey, or if you have already done it. If you can do this, if you can put one foot in front of the other and get your mind right, you can do anything that you choose to do. So if you've thru-hiked and you're sitting wherever you are going, God, I don't know how I'm going to do X, Y, or Z, or I really want to go to law school, but I don't know how I'm going to do it. It's like, you know what? If you're passionate about it, if it matters to you, you can do it. Because writing that novel, when I sat down to do it, I'm like, this is just like hiking the trail. It's putting one foot in front of the other, and it's accepting it's going to take a long fucking time to do, and it doesn't have to be done overnight. It's mentally getting yourself through, because there were times when I was writing, it's like, I wanted to just, if I had physical paper in my hand and it wasn't a laptop, I would have threw it up in the air and go, who do I think I am? I can't do this. What the hell am I doing? But you go to sleep that night and you get a good night's sleep and you get up the next morning and you start over again. And you just keep doing it. And there's no wrong way and there's no right way. There's just your way. So I had to say that because it was just amazing to me that process. Now it's like anything I do, I look at in the same light.
I went to trail days the year after I was on trail, and it was really weird. And I don't know if it was just like, I drove up by myself, expecting that I was gonna run into a bunch of people, and I did. Right. But most of the people there was always like the general crowd around me, but that seemed to be like a central thing about my hike, which I don't, made my hike what it was, but it was also one of those things that like I got there and I was like, this is weird. Like I just sort of looked around, there were lots of people that I like loved to see, but they all like kind of had their own little like things, and there were a lot. That was also about the same time that all of the other like trail romances that had sustained trail and they had like dropped their individual lives and moved in with each other, like all of those relationships seemed to be dissolving at the 1 year trail days, like, and it was just like everything's getting weird, I don't know. And so like I didn't go back because it was like, this is tarnishing the people that I really love their memory, so I'm gonna just leave it and remember that for what it is, and not for like the time that they got all drunk and shitty and like ugly to each other at trail days. So
I'll tell you what really changed trail days in my mind was somewhere after 2000 they quit letting you camp by the river and set up that campsite freaking half-mile away.
Yeah, I remember getting there and having we had to hitch like 178 miles or 180 miles to get back.
Oh, wow.
Something insane.
Oh, the year you were hiking?
Yeah. And I just remember I got there and I had developed like a shitty fucking, I can't remember if it was a blister or what it was, But I just remember finally getting into town, and it was just like, oh, like we got like 120 of those miles we got in one fell swoop. Mm-hmm. This couple just saw us, like we were sitting out in front of a gas station, and they're like, "Are y'all going on trail days?" We're like, "Yeah." They're like, "Yeah, we go every year." Hop in the back, and took us, and so got all the way there, and it was just like, oh, I'm gonna. And I just remember taking my shoes off and like putting my feet in the water right there by the river, like wasn't packed at all. Right. It was just some space between people. Right. I just remember having my feet in the water and just taking a picture of my feet, and my feet were just destroyed. It's just that like you just got like just creases in your feet, that you hadn't had before. And my mom wasn't really disgusted by many things. But she was like, I just don't really ever want to see that picture of your feet again.
You know what I remember?
I'm like, wow.
About you, and when you got bit by a fucking spider.
Yeah.
And you know about this? Mm-mm. He had this, was it here or here? It was right here.
I think it was.
It looked like a golf ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember you going to the doctor, and I remember hearing the whole story. He said because the doctor like gave it like 2 shots of Novocaine and then went at it with a frickin' X-Acto.
It's on here.
It was right where your boot hit, right at the crease of his boot. It was a bad spot.
Yeah.
Am I right? It was a big lump.
Oh, cut it open. I'd say it was bigger than a golf ball. But it was big, and
he had to Novocaine it and cut it open.
He put like 2 shots into it, and like just one here, one there, and the nurse was in the room, and she was just kind of sitting there, and she was looking at it. And he just, that's all he did. He just took a knife and just like, got an X and just like started just like squeezing this big zit. Yeah. And the nurse was just like, and just turned and walked out. And like, he was just like, literally shrugged his shoulders like, well, whatever. And she's just, this stuff just gooping out of there. But yeah.
I remember talking to you the day that happened or the day after because that was right around trail days.
Because I think, that was at, that happened in Pearisburg.
Okay.
And we were close to Pearisburg at that point.
Was right after trail days.
Actually, I guess that had happened beforehand.
Yeah.
So that was probably going on.
You were all wrapped up when you were telling me about it.
Yeah. So I got it in Pearisburg. And it guilted my mom into getting us a hotel room for the night. Because she was like, I was like, it needs to be clean, and we're staying in a hostel, but that was disgusting.
Yeah, and it was right on where your boot.
Yeah.
The edge. It was
right at the top of the edge, so it just always rubbed, and it was like half a baseball.
Yeah.
Like it was just a round mound.
Yeah, big old spider bite.
I got stung by a bee in Maine through my shorts, like right on the ass cheek. And as soon as I got stung, I'm allergic to bees, and I'm just like taking Benadryl by the fistful, like, please don't die, please don't die, please don't die. Like, crap. And that was like the next morning, like I was just taking Benadryl like every 2 hours. And when I woke up the next morning, it looked like somebody had like sawed a softball in half and just like, and it was just this big, nasty. God, it was so itchy.
In my last day on the PCT, she woke up. Well, I woke up, and it was the only time we ever in our entire lives coupled our sleeping bags together because it wound up getting cold. But the thing is that we both had the same exact bag, and it was like they only made this REI bag in a short, and when they made it in short, they only made it with like a left-hand zipper. That's it.
So one of your bags was facing up.
So my bag is, of course, being the guy. I took the bag facing over my face, being nice, and I wake up on my side and I roll over and look over it. And she looks like the kid from Mask. No. She's just like...
What happened to her?
We still don't know. But, like, she woke up and it was like, And I just, like, reached over in my pack and grabbed... I had a digital camera and I was like...
Oh, my Lord, your first...
Well, because I wanted her to see what she looked like. Okay. So, yeah, because I was like, click, and I was like, honey, this is what you look like. And she's just like, ooh, like, oh God, And so her eyes are like shut almost. I mean, she is just.
So what'd you do?
Benadryl, got some Benadryl in her and drank water. Like, literally, it's like as soon as she sat up and started moving around, like, it started to clear up. And the one thing we thought of was that we went on top of this one mountain called San Jacinto. And we got to the top of it, and it's like off the trail, and it's really, really cool. It's like just like a 1 mile, not even like a 3/4 of a mile scramble,
right,
up to this peak, and there was snow everywhere. And so we think she might have gotten some sun poisoning from that. She was red, but she had like lotion on, but it was just enough like snow, bouncing back up at her. But it was like. Well, we never really ever end these things anyway. They just kind of peter out on their own somehow.
Until next time.
I said Peter. I said Peter. Salt Peter.
What was that?
You need to go to bed.
I do.
Your
I'm so
brain
sorry.
is
Saltpeter.
Sorry.
Misfiring.
It is. My brain's
Well, thanks
dying.
for having us on.
Thanks for being on the show.
The show.
This is awesome.
You guys should come back. We'll do a second installation.
Yeah. We'll start a little bit earlier next time. And
Wait, I just realized that all of our names start with a P.
yes.
How about that?
No
Yeah.
way.
Mm-hmm.
Pox, Puss, Peacepipe, and The Professor. Holy shit.
It's prophetic.
Isn't it?
It's preposterous.
Preposterous.
Did I say that right?
You did.
Oh my gosh.
Perpendicular.
Practically perfect in every way.
All right, let's go to bed.
Okay.
All right.
Good night. Happy New Year.
Okay.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Happy Valentine's
Fuckers.
Day. Fuckers.
Oh my God, I
man.
can't believe how late it is.
Ooh, shit. You're going to need some help with that.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, @Pox and Puss.